conclude, therefore, that God exists. For though the idea of substance is in my mind, owing to this, that I myself am a substance, I shouldn't have the idea of an infinite substance, since I'm a finite being, unless that idea of an infinite substance were given me by some substance in reality infinite. You see, the cause must be at least as great as the effect. Okay? And he goes on at the first complete paragraph on 41 to talk of the idea as very clear and distinct. At the beginning of the next paragraph, it's the idea of a being supremely perfect and infinite, in the highest degree true. Towards the bottom of 41's second column, God is actually infinite, so that nothing could be added to his perfection, perfect in all regards. And he's asking how he himself, then he asks on 42, how he himself as a finite creature could even exist. How come that I, a finite creature, can think of an infinite being? How is that possible if there's no God? So for me to exist, able to think of that, then there must be a God to cause me to exist and to be able to think of that. So that he pulls in these three notions. One, that the idea of God has the fullest degree of objective reality, clarity and distinctness, is the idea of an infinite being. He pulls in the recognition that the idea of God is involuntary on a human being's part. Couldn't have caused it myself. And then, thirdly, the existence of the thinking thing itself, the mind, needs explanation. And his conclusion, therefore, emerges at the bottom of the second column of 43. Bottom of the second column. He's just eliminated his parents as the cause. So that the paragraph that ends halfway down the second column of 43, it's necessary to conclude from this that I am and possess the idea of being absolutely perfect, of God, that his existence is most clearly demonstrated. I've not drawn it, he goes on, from the senses. That is to say, it's not adventitious. It's not a pure production or fiction of my mind, it's not factitious. Consequently, there but remains the alternative that it is innate, in the same way as the idea of myself is innate. In truth, it's not to be wondered at that God at my creation implanted this idea in me, that it might serve, as it were, the mark of the workman impressed on his work. Not always necessary that the mark should be different from the work itself, but considering only that God is my creator, it's highly probable that he's in some way fashioned me after his own image and likeness, and that I perceive this likeness, in which is contained the idea of God. But the same faculty that I apprehend myself. Yes, in apprehending myself as a finite thinking thing, you see, I find an image of the infinite thinking thing, God. The effect bears witness to the cause. So when I make myself the object of reflection, I not only find that I am incomplete and dependent being, who unceasingly aspires after something better and greater, I'm assured likewise that he on whom I am dependent possesses all the goods that I aspire after, and he is thus God. The whole force of the argument consists in this, that I perceive I couldn't possibly be of such a nature as I am, and yet have in my mind the idea of God, if God didn't in reality exist. This same God whose idea is in my mind, a being with all these lofty perfections, of which the mind may have slight conception, without, however, being able to fully comprehend them, who is wholly superior to all defect, So it's sufficiently manifest that he cannot be a deceiver, since it's a dictate of the natural light that all fraud and deception spring from some defect. And his conclusion, therefore, is not simply that God exists, his creator, and therefore the cause of the idea of God, but that the God who exists is a perfect being who does not deceive, could not be a deceiver. And in that last phrase, he's added a further assertion on which the fourth meditation is going to depend. Okay? It's going to depend on that because of the hypothesis that is part of the initial skeptical considerations in Meditation 1, that maybe God is deceiving us, or there is some malign being deceiving us, you see. So if God is our creator, we need to be pretty sure that God isn't deceiving us in creating us the way he created us. But if God is completely perfect in all regards, he wouldn't deceive. So our created faculties are not deceptive. And the line of thought in Meditation 4 develops that theme in dealing with the problem of error. Well, okay, stand back from the argument for the existence of God and look at it for a moment. I suppose the simplest way to label it is that it is a cause-effect argument for the existence of God. A cause-effect argument. I said it's not a cosmological argument. It doesn't begin from the cosmos, the physical cosmos. It's not a teleological argument that begins from the ordered design of the cosmos, like Thomas Aquinas did. But it's still a cause-effect argument. You see, the effect being the existence of a mind and its idea of God. Idea from that. Argument from that. It's not an ontological argument, which proceeded in the case of Anselm by trying to analyze the idea of God and show that it would be a logical self-contradiction to deny the existence of God. That is not what is involved here. But Descartes does, in Meditation 5, develop an ontological argument. Okay? But not yet. So don't confuse the ontological argument of Meditation 5 with the causal argument of Meditation 3. Get the difference? Well, if you ask yourself, why would he leave the ontological argument till Meditation 5? Why not treat the whole kit and caboodle in one fell swoop in Meditation 3? The answer is that he doesn't have sufficient logical premises. He's trying to do it in this deductive, systematic fashion. Because in order to do an ontological argument, he has to be confident that what human reason judges to be logically necessary is logically necessary. Not causally necessary, but logically necessary. So if you're going to look at the internal logic of the concept of God in forming an ontological argument, you've got to have confidence in the laws that govern human reason, you see. And that is what awaits still Meditation 4. So he can't do the ontological until he has done Meditation 4. Comment? Question? Did you follow the line of thought, or do you want to rerun on it?
I was just going to ask where the idea, you mentioned natural light several times. Where does that fit in?
Yeah.
As far as being something that he has been able to...
Yeah. A good question, because the metaphor of light and enlightenment the metaphor of light and enlightenment is something we've been running into from Plato onwards, you see. In the Christian tradition, I think it starts most clearly with Augustine, where the Enlightenment is the light of the divine Logos enlightening the human mind to see the rationes, those eternal truths, thoughts. However, that notion of the Logos that enlightens the mind seems to go in two different directions in medieval times. One, obviously, is in the Augustinian tradition, which, as I mentioned, comes out in people like Bonaventure, who talk of the Logos enlightening the mind, rather than going with Aristotelian epistemology. Remember? On the other hand, while Aquinas picks up on Augustine's Logos doctrine in terms of the exemplarism of Augustine, archetypal ideas in the mind of God, Aquinas doesn't speak of the divine Logos enlightening the human mind, but speaks instead of the light of reason. The light of reason. The light, if you like, of natural reason. Now, the difference is subtle, because Augustine's notion of enlightenment is not just of enlightening the minds of believers, the way in theology this comes out, but it's the John chapter 1 notion that the Logos enlightens everyone who comes into the world. In other words, a general human knowledge of universals is possible because of the light the Logos sheds in the human mind. He's not talking about simply enlightening the mind with regards to what Scripture teaches. No. So it's an enlightening of the mind's natural capacities. Well, here in Aquinas, you see, it is the natural capacity which sheds the light. Not the light on the natural capacities, but the natural capacities shed the light. At least that's the way it sounds in Aquinas. But when you get to Descartes, I think it's explicitly that way. The light of reason, the natural light of reason, the light of nature, you see. And it's that notion which underlies the 18th century enlightenment. God said, let Newton be, and all was light. Where'd the light come from? Newton's scientific reason. Yes. Yeah. So I think that's a good question. It catches a distinction between the Augustinian tradition and the Cartesian tradition.